Also wanted to show you, I don't know how well you can see, but we were able to inspect the clutch and the throwout bearing that's back there and the flywheel. Make sure none of the starter teeth were missing. These fresh air vents, the cables are froze that are in the bus, so most mechanics wire them so that they're open or closed depending on the time of year. I don't want to close off the cooling for the motor. This is the cable guide that the accelerator cable is going to come through. Be careful not to mash that when I'm going up. The two bolts that are sticking out of the transaxle there go through right here, and hopefully it's just slippies right in. I'll get my trolley out. This is a Harbor Freight moving dolly with a towel on top, an old beach towel. Works great. I don't think we can get the floor jack under there quite yet. Gonna have to jack it up another notch after I beat my head on everything. That may be high enough now that I can position it on the floor jack. Now if you're smart, you'll get a proper engine lift. If not, at least rig up a situation where you've got a cradle that would lock onto the end of your jack to keep the motor from slipping. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go cowboy. So I'm going to try to pick the center of gravity here, right on the bottom of that oil strainer. That seems like it's a little forward. Now you guys would be kind to remind me that I need to clean and change that oil strainer before I put oil in. Let's make sure and do that. When we get to that point. See, that's perfectly balanced right there. And now, what I need to do is see if I can get an eyeball on those engine mount bolts. Try to line those bolts up. And I don't know if you guys can help. Maybe I'll just have you cheer, all right? Couple more pumps. Maybe one. Can't tell. It's there. It's there on your side. Hold on here. Let me check this side. I'm gonna have to back up just a little bit and line it up. Looks close, huh? come up a little bit. Spin it. Was that it? How's that look, guys? I spun the crankshaft just a little bit to line up the splines and the transaxle. Are we close enough to get some nuts on it? Oh, sweet. That looks nice. Marry up right here, and you can see where the bolt is stuck through and the motor's transaxle. What was hanging me up was sliding the spline over the flywheel over the spline. So I grabbed a hold of the generator and moved the whole crankshaft a little bit, just in order to get her to slip over. So it's just going to sit here while we get some nuts on it. This tin belongs up here. So when we get done with the installation, this is going to move up that whole 2 inches. Right now it's hanging from the transaxle, but we still have the jack under it. When there was no weight, the weight of the motor wasn't there, everything was off kilter. Now we're going to begin to attach the weight of the motor to the bus. The whole thing is going to squat down, and the transaxle is going to change angle. So let's see how those back bolts look on top. Not sure if you're going to be able to see it. Yeah, you can see the nut. The bolt is protruding there. Let's see if it looks like the halves are married up. They do. You can see that bolt on the starter just sticking out a little bit. Let's push it in. That goes like that. Hold it tight. And that goes on this side, right down there. So if we get those on, we will be to the point where we can relax a little bit. These are very difficult to get to. Remember to have small arms when you're doing this part. When you're tightening up this upper bolt on the right side, make sure that the bolt that goes through the starter has a little flat that locks it into place against the starter where it goes, so that you're not trying to tighten it up and it's off kilter. Here's that rear crossmember piece we call the mustache bar, and I chose to leave it off until I had the motor in place. Once you get the motor jacked up high enough, then you can get the mustache bar into place and line it up with the motor. There are some screws that go through the frame into the mustache bar. Okay, I've got all the bolts in and snug, and I'm going to choose to tighten them in this order. I'm going to do the back 4 bolts on the transaxle. I'm going to do the bolts, the motor mounts to the cross member, and then I'm going to tighten up the cross member to the frame. Once that's done, we got to put the exhaust back on, all the engine tin, hook up the throttle cable and the wiring, finish the air duct hoses and the fuel line, and we should be ready to fire it up. You may remember back when we were taking it off that we had to cut that bumper off in order to get to all this. So I've got the bolts too to put the bumper back on. We'll save that for the very end. If you haven't done it yet, hit that like button for me and go down there and subscribe, because this thing is far from done. We got a lot to do. All right, all the bolts are tight, and it was pretty much all 17 millimeter, by the way. The next thing I'm going to tackle is that aftermarket fuel filter holder bracket. That was a real nightmare to get that off, so we're going to tackle getting that bolted back on now. It did not need to be that long. I would like to get a new exhaust. It's needed. This exhaust is trashed. I did get some new exhaust gaskets. So we've got new exhaust gaskets, and we're going to put it together this way and weld up some of the broken parts. Mainly due to time and expenses. It's camping season, and I've been doing some camping with my family, so these videos have gotten a little longer in between. And I'm kind of anxious to get the old bus running again, get the engine back in with all the new components and the clean tank. So if all that goes well and we get all the bugs worked out, then we'll shop for a new exhaust. The thing that's complicated about the exhaust on these is all of the ductwork for the heating system is involved, and it's also the cooling system for the motor. Well, lots of old school air-cooled Volkswagen guys delete the heater system altogether, especially if you're in warmer climates, Hawaii, Mexico, Southern California. They just, when they do the restorations, they don't have heaters anymore. But, you know, we're here in the Pacific Northwest, and we're going to probably want to keep the heat ducts. We're going to kind of piece this back together and not worry too much about whether or not we're going to stay warm. But we are worrying about whether we're cooling the motor. And before winter, if this gets to be something we're going to daily drive in the wintertime, we'll have to deal with that. The exhaust ports run straight out of the heads. So what's coming towards me, the back of the vehicle, is the port for cylinder 2 and for cylinder 4. They come out this way. But then inside the heat exchangers are the ports for the back 2 cylinders, and those are completely different pipes with gaskets and everything. I left those on. They come through the heat exchanger and come out here. So where it's broken off right here, cylinder 1 basically is just kind of puffing out of the side, and cylinder 2 here we're putting a new gasket on, so it's all kind of relative. These front 2, cylinder 2 and cylinder 4, also have the heat riser which preheats the intake. So this intake tube right here is cylinder 4's exhaust port, putting a new gasket in there, and this basically just is a warming tube, and it comes alongside the intake. So when the fuel mixture comes down this pipe heading for the intake valves, it's pre-warmed by heat from the exhaust. So basically it's just a tube that doesn't go anywhere, but it transfers heat. It's completely separated, but it transfers heat into the intake tube. So imagine the cold air is coming in here, vaporizing, getting mixed with gasoline, going into the manifold, and as it heads for the intake valves, it's warmed by warm exhaust air running parallel to it. The fan that's in the housing back here that does the cooling and the warming for the intake is driven off the back of the generator. So the generator goes right through, we get the pulley for the generator, and it's also running the cooling fan. Super simple engines. Okay, that's gonna have to do. All right, having welded up the exhaust as good as I could. Not rattling anymore. Putting the tin back on, such as it is. This is called the engine tin. It's a big tin molding skirt that goes around it. It's supposed to seal it off from the elements, but all my rubber gaskets are gone. Well, there's a piece of ductwork that goes right here. There's a heat riser, another pipe that comes up for the oil bath air cleaner. And I had forgotten to put that in, so I had to take all the tin back off again. Because you can't put it on once you put everything else on. I think the main thing is to keep from getting frustrated. Oh man, how many times have I worked on this fuel filter? I've got to have this clear sight style though, so that I can watch my fuel and see what's getting filtered out. Make sure there's nothing. Of course, I don't know where there would be. The tank's fresh and all the lines are new. There are two gaskets on top and on the bottom of the oil strainer, and then that lid goes over it. So we're going to get under here. Once you get the lid off, it seems like you're there, but you realize that you take the gasket that you can see down. There's still another gasket in the oil strainer there we got to get off. It'll get misshapen by the time we get it off, but then we can bend it all straight again before we put it back. There's your oil strainer. There's your second gasket. That screen's in great shape, one of the best I've seen. It means it hasn't been taken out very many times, or it's new. The new gasket kit comes with drain plug, all the new copper washers for the bolts, 2 new gaskets, one goes on either side of the strainer. Kind of awkward that the filter says Ford on it, but that's the one that goes with this adapter. Get the battery installed, fuel lines hooked up, throttle cable. This is either oil temperature or oil pressure, but it runs a light on the dash. So if you know if this is pressure or temperature, maybe leave me a comment down on the bottom so we can all know. It's got to do with the oil, and the oil light will come on if that grounds out. I think we're ready to hit it. So you guys watch here. I'm gonna go turn the key and we'll see what happens, all right? That means our carburetor's set up nicely. It's all ready to idle. I believe when you're setting the timing on these, you gotta have the vacuum and vents off and blocked, so let's do that. Sounds like an old air-cooled Volkswagen, doesn't it? All right. What's wrong with that? All right. Well, we knew it'd start right up and run, didn't we? I thank you for sticking with me and helping me get that done. Now, I'm going to get the interior put back together and get the driver's seat in. We'll take it out on the road for a ride. So come right back for that. For now, if you would please drop down, hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss it when it's time for the test drive. Sure appreciate you hanging out with me. Thanks for watching.